Aryna Sabalenka has secured her place in the Australian Open final after surviving a grueling semi-final battle against Elina Svitolina. However, what should have been a moment of triumph has instead been overshadowed by controversy, following on-court behavior that has sparked widespread outrage across the tennis world. Sabalenka is no stranger to criticism, but this time the situation escalated far beyond the usual scrutiny. While she emerged victorious on the scoreboard, her conduct during the match, particularly an alleged racially charged remark, has drawn intense backlash and left fans and analysts stunned. The incident occurred during a tense semi-final clash, with both players locked in a high-stakes contest. Throughout the match, Sabalenka's powerful game was accompanied by her trademark grunts, a common feature in modern tennis. But during one particularly heated rally, frustration appeared to boil over. Sabalenka was heard making a comment directed at her opponent, Elina Svitolina of Ukraine, that many interpreted as racially inappropriate. The reaction was immediate. The crowd fell silent, and viewers watching around the world were left in disbelief. The chair umpire acted without hesitation, stepping in to address the situation. Sabalenka was issued a hindrance penalty, resulting in an immediate point deduction, a clear signal that such behavior would not be tolerated, especially on a stage as prestigious as the Australian Open. Unwilling to accept the ruling quietly, Sabalenka challenged the decision and demanded a review. As tension filled the arena, the review process unfolded, but the outcome remained unchanged. The umpire's call stood, and the penalty was upheld, reinforcing the seriousness of the incident. This moment marked a turning point for Sabalenka. In the past, she had often escaped severe consequences despite controversial on-court behavior. This time, however, the line had clearly been crossed. The incident added to a growing pattern, as Sabalenka has previously faced criticism for remarks and actions that have drawn negative attention. While her place in the final is secure, the controversy has cast a long shadow over her achievement. As the tennis world turns its focus to the championship match, questions remain, not only about Sabalenka's performance, but about accountability, sportsmanship, and the standards expected at the highest level of the sport during matches. Sabalenka has often walked a fine line between competitive intensity and unsportsmanlike behavior. One notable example came during her encounter with Coco Gauff. In that match, Sabalenka relied heavily on exaggerated grunting and loud vocalizations, tactics many felt were intended to intimidate the young American and disrupt her rhythm. While Sabalenka did manage to win that contest, it was clear that the excessive noise and emotional outbursts were part of a broader strategy to gain a psychological edge. That match, however, was far from an isolated incident. Sabalenka previously faced Elena Svitolina, another powerful and composed competitor, in a tournament final. Sabalenka ultimately lost the match, but the controversy didn't end there. In post-match comments captured on camera, she made dismissive remarks about Svitolina, subtly questioning the legitimacy of her opponent's victory. It was an uncomfortable moment that reinforced a growing perception. When things don't go her way, Sabalenka has a tendency to lash out rather than reflect. This troubling pattern resurfaced at the Australian Open semi-final against Elina Svitolina, where Sabalenka's conduct reached a new low. During the match, she was caught making a racially offensive remark, further intensifying scrutiny of her behavior. The umpire's swift intervention was necessary and revealing. It underscored just how seriously the situation was taken and how far the boundaries of acceptable conduct had been crossed. For an athlete of Sabalenka's stature, the incident served as a stark reminder that elite talent does not excuse a lack of sportsmanship. Respect for opponents is a fundamental principle of the sport, and in this instance, that standard appeared to be ignored. To make matters worse, Sabalenka's attitude in defeat has often drawn criticism. One of the most glaring examples came after her loss to Coco Gauff in the US Open final. Rather than acknowledging Gauff's performance with grace, Sabalenka suggested that her opponent hadn't outplayed her, implying instead that the result was due solely to her own poor execution. Many viewed those comments as an attempt to shift responsibility rather than accept the outcome. Taken together, these moments have contributed to an increasingly concerning narrative, one that raises serious questions about accountability, professionalism, and respect at the highest level of the game.
She won the match not because she played incredible, just because I made all of those mistakes from, like, if you look from the outside, kind of like from an easy balls.
This pattern has become impossible to ignore for Aryna Sabalenka. After losses, instead of acknowledging her opponent's performances, she has repeatedly chosen to diminish their achievements. Whether it's Coco Gauff, Elena Rybakina, or Elina Svitolina, Sabalenka's post-match reactions have often included excuses, deflections, or subtle put-downs rather than respect. For a player with the talent and platform to become one of the sport's all-time greats, this persistent lack of sportsmanship is deeply concerning. Now, with the racial slur controversy in the Australian Open semi-final, Sabalenka appears to have crossed a line that goes far beyond competitive frustration. The incident has cast a serious shadow over her reputation, leaving the tennis world divided. Some argue she deserves the benefit of the doubt, that this was a single lapse in judgment and not a reflection of her character. Others see it as the latest example of a deeper, unresolved issue involving respect, accountability, and professionalism. Regardless of perspective, one fact remains clear: Sabalenka's actions have overshadowed her achievement of reaching the Australian Open final. What should have been a defining moment in her career has instead become a source of controversy. How she responds now may determine her future standing in the sport. If the patterns continue, the tennis community may have little choice but to demand stronger accountability. From an officiating standpoint, the umpire's decision stood out as a rare moment where the system functioned as intended. The penalty sent a clear message: no player, regardless of ranking or stage, is above the rules. It was an important step toward preserving the integrity of the game and reinforcing expectations of proper conduct. But the consequences didn't stop at the scoreline. Elina Svitolina, who was the target of the offensive remark, maintained her composure throughout the match, refusing to let the incident derail her focus. Yet after the final point, she made a powerful statement by declining to shake Sabalenka's hand. While post-match handshakes are a long-standing tradition in tennis, many viewed Svitolina's decision not as poor sportsmanship, but as a justified response to the disrespect she endured. In the days ahead, debate will only intensify. Supporters will frame Sabalenka as a fiery competitor who momentarily lost control in the heat of battle. Critics will argue that the incident confirms a long-standing pattern that the sport can no longer ignore. What's undeniable is that Sabalenka now faces a crossroads. If she hopes to repair her image, she must show genuine reflection, accountability, and growth. Talent alone is no longer the question. Character is. The Australian Open semi-final may ultimately define her career, depending on how she handles the fallout. Will this moment serve as a turning point toward maturity and respect, or will it reinforce a reputation that continues to divide the tennis world? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the entire tennis community is watching closely to see how Aryna Sabalenka responds, and whether she can truly change the narrative surrounding her career.